Hi, and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. This is your host, Chanel Nielsen, and today we are talking with Jennifer Brimhall. Jen lives in rural Arizona with her husband, Ammon, her 5 kids, and as she says, lots of dark chocolate. So, Jen, I have to ask you, what's your favorite? What dark chocolate are we talking about here?
Oh, pretty much anything except for Hershey's Special Dark. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of a snob that way, but I love the Brookside. That's really good.
Okay.
Ghirardelli's is really good.
Yes. Okay. I'm with you. I like the really dark chocolate. Hershey's is not quite dark enough for me. So yeah, I gotcha. Special Dark is not so special. Okay. So Jen has a background in education and history. She loves being able to guide her children's education and has been a homeschooling mom at times. And one of the special things about Jen is that she is a natural resource gatherer. And she says inspirational resources make her especially happy. And that is why we're talking with her today. Jen has an awesome website called Raise the Good. And we're going to talk a little bit about that website and what it is. It's a great resource for moms. Can you start us off, Jen, by telling us a little bit about how you came up with the idea for your website and what it's all about?
Of course. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you. I have to admit that some of the credit actually goes to my mom. First of all, she kind of started this on a level where she would just give us, as we were growing up, I'm the oldest of 8 children, actually. I'm not sure how she did that.
So am I. I'm also the oldest of 8. How fun.
Okay, that is fun. But she would just continually feed us this wonderful diet of inspiring books and movies. And so growing up, that's just what I was used to. And so I'm kind of a second generation resource gatherer. And then when I started homeschooling, that helped me to find even more resources that were kind of uncommon, things that a lot of people didn't know about it. And I just loved it. And I would get so excited about these great things that would teach my kids to be honest and to be kind and to enjoy math and all these other wonderful things so that I didn't have to lecture them.
Yeah.
They would get it and they would get excited about it and I wouldn't have to do a thing. And I thought, this is amazing. And so I would tell my friends about it. And unfortunately, I would get a little overexcited and tend to shove it down their throats a little bit. So I decided to, I will get my own little corner of the internet and I will post these things for people for them to find them when they need them so that I can give my poor friends a break.
That's great. And there are plenty of people who are looking for good resources. And so it's wonderful to have a place to be able to go to find those things. So for people who haven't been to your website yet, tell a little bit about kind of what resources are there.
Well, one of the biggest reasons why I made the website to go a little bit deeper is because a lot of people look at the world and the direction it's headed and they get discouraged or they get scared about raising kids. And I just wanted to give kind of just a gathering place where parents can take courage and get inspiration and realize that we all have good in us and that we are all here for a reason and that we become what we consume. And that is the same with our children. They are here for a reason too. And Aristotle once said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And that really resonates with me because if you look at the scary things that happen in the world or the things that are really disturbing, it's not because trees or animals are doing weird things. It's because of us. It's because of our hearts and the way that we're acting. And so if we can educate our children's hearts as well as their minds, but work on their hearts, I really believe that we can change the world in a really important way by teaching people how to have good relationships, by teaching our children why it's important to be honest, to do hard things that are really good things. And I believe that when we do that, we can raise a whole generation of children who will become adults who can go and make a difference in the world.
I love that. That's so cool. That was a great quote by Aristotle. Can you repeat that one more time for us?
Sure. It's educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all.
I love that. And that goes along with what you said, which is we become what we consume. So kind of as we're, watching these things and consuming these things, on not just like eating, but like visually, and everything that surrounds us is what we're becoming. And so I think that's why it's so important as parents to really find these good resources, because it's so easy to just, have our kids, or even ourselves for that matter, to just turn something on and watch it, even though it's not necessarily who we want to become. And it becomes really apparent, as a parent, you see this like, oh my gosh, I don't want my kids watching this or knowing this. And so that's why I think your website is so valuable, because we can have a place where we can feel like, okay, there's going to be something good, and there's going to be something uplifting. And here are ideas for things that are good and are going to help our children become who we want them to become. So I love that.
I really believe that, we hear about copycat crimes often, but I think there are also copycat lifestyles. Lindsay Lohan has been in those tabloids quite a bit because of some of her outrageous behavior, and she attributes some of that to her favorite TV show, which is Sex and the City. And so for her, she proudly admits that she has a copycat lifestyle, that she has based some of her decisions on what the characters of that TV show did. And so
wow.
So that's why we have some pillars at Raise the Good of what our resources focus on. And they focus on character, they focus on education, on faith, on healthy relationships, intentional living, heroes, and good, clean fun. So that when our children are exposed to these things, they also have copycat lifestyles where they can copycat the things that they read and they see.
I love that. And that reminds me of, I had just read on your website a blog post that you wrote about children learning by osmosis. And you talked about how they pick things up from their parents. So it's kind of that the same idea of copycat behavior. And so it goes along. If we watch good things, if we consume good things, then our children will copycat not only the behavior that they're watching, but also our behavior in consuming good quality media. So that's a great thing.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit, what kind of criteria you use for deciding whether or not a certain movie or book or something goes on your website. How are you making those decisions as you promote these certain, books and movies, audio, etc.?
I make a promise to my readers that I will never post about something that I don't wholeheartedly believe in. And I take that very, very seriously. I'm pretty picky. My kids wish I wasn't as picky as I am sometimes. But for me, it has to touch my heart. I have to want to be a better person, or I want to be able to appreciate other people more. It has to be interesting and fun. Now, there is a spectrum, just like there's a spectrum with healthy food. Sometimes we're not ready for the hardcore kale, when we're first starting out, yes. And so it's the same with these resources. It's a diet that you become used to, sort of, just like it would be with introducing vegetables into your diet, for example. So there is a spectrum, but I try to have them be fun and interesting, and I like them to be clean and family friendly for the most part. Everyone has their own standards of what is acceptable or not, but I try to err on the really safe side. Sometimes if something will deal with a mature theme or subject, I think that's okay, as long as it shows natural consequences or the lessons that it teaches outweighs the bad. Hard and scary and tricky things do happen in our world, and so I want to be able to introduce my children to them at an appropriate time for them so that I can help guide them through that emotional messiness that happens sometimes when we learn about these things. But right. If we are very purposeful in how we introduce difficult things to our children and we are there with them, then I think that that's the best way to do it.
I'm glad you said that. I think that's a really good point because, children can learn a lot, and it's just us as parents deciding kind of what they're ready for. And for us personally, like we've watched some movies. our family loved VidAngel, which
I love VidAngel
VidAngel is the best. Yes. So for those who aren't familiar, it's a movie editing. You stream the movies and then you can edit the movies and take out whatever you want to take out, which is wonderful. But you don't take out content. Obviously, you're taking out things like language or bad scenes or things like that. Why I say we loved VidAngel is because they're currently being sued and you can't use their movies anymore. But anyway, so because of VidAngel, we were able to cut out of certain movies things that we didn't want to see, but still watch some movies that did have a little older, maybe a theme. And like you brought up, then we're able to talk about some of those tricky situations. We watched a few movies about race issues and my kids were really interested. It brought up all kinds of good discussion and maybe some things that they had been saying that weren't really appropriate. They started to realize kind of why those weren't appropriate. So movies can be great ways to teach our children. And sometimes we need to let them kind of see those trickier or a little more mature content at a certain level without letting them, for me, like I don't want my kids to see awful gore or violence or any of those kinds of things, but still learn a lesson from those other kind of movies. So
yes. And I would say that sometimes I think we might not give our children enough credit. We obviously don't want to expose them to things that are beyond their maturity level. A 3-year-old watching certain things,
right.
Obviously I would agree with. But I think our children are capable of understanding and developing sensitivity to certain themes and that they can learn a lot that sometimes we don't give them credit for. And so I try to not dumb things down for my children. If I think that they're at an appropriate age where it's a good time for them to learn a certain thing, then I will do that. But our kids are smart. And they have a big world to deal with. And so I want to equip them to deal with that world in the best way possible.
That's great. And then I think part of that is being an intentional parent, which is something that you talk about on your website, intentional living. You are intentionally giving them this little bit of information, and then you're there with them to guide them through it. And you're knowing what you're exposing them to. You're talking about it after, rather than just throwing them in a room with a TV or a video game and just hoping it's okay. You're actually thinking it through. And I think that makes a big difference.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, tell me, one of my very favorite sections of your website is the hero section. And Jen has a section on there that just talks about heroes. And for the most part, they seem like your everyday heroes. I didn't see many names that I recognize. There were a couple, but for the most part, these are run-of-the-mill average heroes. So we're not talking like Oprah Winfrey on your hero list. We're talking about the heroes in your neighborhood, the heroes that are all around us. And I just love that because I think that's what heroes really are. Tell us kind of how you came up with that section. Tell us all about that section. I'll just leave it at that. And you can just go ahead and tell us everything we should know about that hero section.
Okay, great. Well, I think obviously superhero movies are really big right now. And our kids see these movies or they see the action figures and they think, oh, these guys are so cool. They're so strong, or they save the world, or, whatever it is they do. And they want to be like them. But the fact is they're not going to be able to lift semi-trucks or fly or shoot lasers or anything else. And that's fiction. That doesn't really happen, but I want them to see that they can still help people. And I want them to be able to recognize the real people around them who are doing that, the real heroes. And I want my children and other children and myself and everyone else to recognize the greatness that's around them in common everyday people and the greatness in themselves, that they can do something heroic and wonderful and good. And when we see the best in each other, I think that that's a best case scenario for neighborhoods and families and communities and everything. So I do feature people who I just was in the process of writing one today about our scoutmaster, our local scoutmaster, who is the most genuine person around. He's had a lot of financial difficulties. You look at his home, and it looks kind of messy, and he's got lots of old vehicles all around it and everything else, but he's amazing. And our life is so much richer because of what he has done for our family and the type of person that he is. And I want my children to see him for the hero that he is. So
that's so cool. And one of the things that stands out about that is that he's a hero because of all the good he's doing, but he's not perfect. And I think that's part of what is so exciting about that section, because we see Spider-Man and Superman and they are perfect, in a lot of ways. Physically, they're perfect and they have powers and all these things. But a real hero might have a few extra cars in his driveway, or, my life is messy. And so when kids are able to see that, when all of us are able to see that, and then see that through the mess of life, these people are still doing heroic things, that's really inspiring to see. So tell us who of all, and this might be a hard thing to narrow down, but of all those heroes in your hero section, who's your favorite and why?
Oh my goodness. I was trying to go through the list earlier, and it's just like being asked to pick a favorite child. It's so hard. I would say one of my favorites is this little boy named Campbell who enjoys sewing. And his friends would make fun of him. His family would make fun of him and say, "What is wrong with you? You like to sew?" But he was true to himself, and he knew what he liked, and he was okay with it. And he eventually learned how to make stuffed animals. They're beautiful stuffed animals that you would go to the store and pay quite a bit of money for. And he would make these and donate them to children in the hospital who were terminally ill. And he's donated, I believe, over 500 stuffed animals to children. And it's just a fabulous story. And he's the cutest kid around. His father got diagnosed with cancer, and he said, "Dad, I wanted to make this bear for you. This is your get well bear. This will help you get better." Wow. And he's just a great kid. There's another man in India who he's a chef for 5-star hotels, and he was getting ready to transfer jobs, and he went home to visit his parents, and on the way he saw a man in the dirt, and he was doing something. And so the man's name is, I'm going to slaughter this, but it's Narayanan, I believe. And he went closer up to this homeless man to see what he was doing, and he was eating his own refuse because he was so hungry.
Oh my goodness.
There was nothing for him to eat. And it just shook Narayanan to the core, and just said, "What am I doing? I'm cooking this fancy food for people to pay so much money for when there are people starving in the streets." And so he quit his job, and he went home, and he made that man food. And he took it to him, and he's been doing that ever since. And he now feeds all the homeless and hungry people in India that he can come in contact with. He washes and bathes them. He cuts their hair. It's amazing that he stopped his life and the course that it was in, and he said, "I can do something better with my life by working with the humblest and most needy people." And his story is amazing, and it really will bring tears to your eyes when you watch it. So
I love that. Both of those are just so awesome. People, using the talents that they've been given to bless other people's lives. So how do you see people, what's your vision for how people can use this hero section?
I hope it will just help start a conversation. Just at the dinner table, if parents will say, "Guys, I read the coolest story today," and listen to what this person did. There was a boy in high school, and he saw that there was a girl being mistreated, and he put a stop to it. And, do you ever see that at school? Do you ever see boys being inappropriate to girls? Have you seen anybody at school stop it? Or should you be that person? I just think if it can be a conversation opener, I think that's my biggest hope, is that families will look at it and say, "How can I be like that?" Or what opportunities do I see in my life today at school or at work or in the neighborhood? And how can I be one of these people?
That is so great. I love that. I think that really what you're doing with your website is an opportunity on so many levels for families to have conversations and to, realize that there are good things out there, and then to promote that good and to be a part of that good as you learn more and then you emulate and copycat that behavior. So we're about out of time. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share as you've worked on your website, things that you've learned, or things that you hope people would gain as they learn from Raise the Good?
I would just encourage people to use the resources that are out there, because parenting's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. And my kids, they get so tired of listening to me sometimes telling them to be nice. But if you read some of these great books or watch some of these great movies, somebody else can tell your kids how to be nice in a much more impactful and interesting way. And then that your kids will listen to, and they will look up to those people. And so I would say, don't feel like you have to do this alone. There are so many mentors out there who are just available at the click of a button or at your library. And it makes for some great family time together where you can have these conversations and where you can all just rise together. And that's my goal for myself and my family as well. So,
well, that is perfect. I think that that's a lot of our goal, is to do that. And so thank you for what you're doing to help other families be able to find the good. So Jen's website, raisethegood.com. Go check it out. And Jen, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.